This is a presentation on return on investment instructional design. This is Education 63, Principles of Design and Management in Educational Technology and Online Learning by Sierra Smiley. The purpose of this presentation is to explain the concept of return on investment as it relates to instructional design. What is return on investment? Return on investment is an extreme measure of progress that shows the proportion of what you put in and get back subsequently. Cocolina, 2019. How is return of investment calculated? Return of investment is calculated the total revenue minus the total cost divided by the total cost altogether, that is multiplied by 100, gives you the return of investment percentage. So according to Sakaropoulos and Petrinos 2018, for an investment to be monetarily justified, the pace of return ought to be positive and ought to be higher than the elective pace of return. For the individual, gauging expenses and advantages implies contributing if the pace of return surpasses the private rebate rate. So basically the expense of borrowing and the recompense for the risk. The concept of return of investment in instructional design. The concept of return on investment in instructional design is a methodical, consistent cycle with moderate norms. The cycle incorporates procedures to separate the impacts of the learning on impact information, like quality, productivity, time, expenses, and sales. The return on investment procedure likewise requires conveying the outcomes to an assortment of key stakeholders. It's Reiser and Dempsey, 2018. Benefits of instructional design in businesses is tangible, increased output, and return of investment, and intangible is worker loyalty. In education, activity-oriented, project-based, student-centered instruction, and it promotes active learning. The most common measurement model to evaluate training is the Kirkpatrick training evaluation model. According to Reiser and Dempsey, 2018, on page 91, level 1 reaction is used to study the overall reactions of learners and participants in training programs and collecting data and information by asking questions. These include open-ended and closed-ended questions. Level 2, learning, is just to determine what was learned and retained for later use. So typically by administering some type of test to demonstrate knowledge that was learned or obtained. Level 3, behavior. This is where we determine whether the learner's behavior has changed due to being a participant in the learning program. To evaluate this, the method is that by having everyone involved complete a questionnaire. And when we say having everyone involved, we mean the trainee, supervisors, peers, everyone that was potentially involved all have to be involved and have to complete this questionnaire in order for us to be able to evaluate the change in behavior from the participant or the learner. Level 4, results. Determining if the training has an impact on the final results by use of pre-test and post-test design according to Kirkpatrick, it may be more difficult to evaluate. Returns on investment in education. Human capital theory. The idea of the rate of profit on investment in education is basically the same as that for some other investments It is an outline of the expenses and advantages of the venture brought about at various focuses on schedule, and it is communicated in a yearly rate similar to that cited for bank accounts or government securities. Profits from interest and schooling dependent on human capital theory have been assessed since the last part of the 1950s. Human capital theory advances the idea that investments in education increment future productivity. The assessment of training programs inspires viability and distinguishes the potential measures to take to improve the program. Why evaluate? Let's talk about it. According to Curato and Bernardino 2018, Kirkpatrick presents 6 reasons to engage in evaluating the effectiveness of training. 1. To decide on further investment based on the achieved results. 2. To improve the training programs by designing and implementing better programs in the future. 3. To ensure learning takes place and guaranteeing that knowledge and skills are enhanced. 4. To maximize the transfer of learning to behavior and subsequent organizational results that shows the value of training. 5. To align training with the firm's strategy by ensuring that there is a fit between training policies and organizational strategies and agendas. And lastly, 6. To prove the relevancy of the training function by demonstrating its value to the entire organization. This presentation explains the concept of return on investment as it relates to instructional design. When it comes to instructional design and the return on investment, this is why we evaluate in order to determine if our return on investment will be positive or negative. And this is how we evaluate how it will be either positive or negative. We have to first, as stated in these 6 reasons, which number 1 being the top reason, decide on further investment based on the achieved results. So based on all of that we discussed within Kirkpatrick's training evaluation model, the reaction, the learning, the behavior, and most importantly, the results. Thanks for viewing this presentation. These are the references that were used in this presentation.